So I wanted to share my thoughts on Obama's speech today. First, an impression I had of something I noticed during the ceremony when CNN said that, exactly 12 noon he was officially the president, regardless of timing and invocation and all that stuff. Um, at that exact moment, I was paying attention to the clock to watch carefully. Um, right when it's 12 struck, I looked back to see what was happening, to kind of capture the moment, and he kind of had his eyes closed. He was looking up, kind of sun in his face. The sky was clear. Um, 2 million people were silent. And Itzhak Perlman was, I believe, playing the very first note of the music that they were going to play on his violin before everybody else had even chimed in. It was just this perfect, pure moment, and he looked so calm and relaxed and at peace and not at all like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I was really impressed by that. And I felt like there was something to that. It wasn't just his strength, or that he's always, cool under pressure, but that probably the most watched event in the history of humanity, even more than the last episode of MASH, according to CNN. It wasn't just watched, it wasn't just this pressure, but he was there because of all those people, even people in the world outside the United States, are not just for him being the president, but most of those people hopefully get his message that we're doing it, that he's just the quarterback. You put even the best quarterback in the world out there on the field and ask them to play against the entire Raiders team, pick your choice, whatever. They're going to lose terribly, and that's what he's really up against. He doesn't have his own team, so to speak. He doesn't have the insiders, lobbyists, the people bought and paid for in Congress. He's only got us, and so I think he felt like with the turnout and the positive emotion coming from so many people that it was going to work. That this is going to come out okay because we are all taking this oath. Really, we've all kind of signed in the dotted line and agreed to what his proposal was. His proposal was different than everyone else's. His proposal was, I am not going to rescue you. I am not a knight in shining armor. We are going to do this together. So it was just a really incredible moment that I observed. But I did a response to his speech that I wanted to share as well. First, there was a man on the street kind of interview thing that CNN was doing, and 18-year-old college kid was interviewed and said it best, better than I could say it, ironically. He said, every time I hear him speak, it makes me want to be a better person. It really captures it very well, I think. It just inspires you to, not so much to be him or to do something different, but just to be better, be a better person, to do more, and not in this purely altruistic anything. In his words, to be the very best, room sweeper there is, if that's what you are. So my reaction to his speech and his candidacy and his presidency. I was born in that town, just a few blocks up the river from the Watergate apartments. Nixon was in office, and my dad and W's dad both worked over at Langley. We had a small townhouse in McLean where Cheney is off to now. My dad was a devout Republican and supported H.W. Bush with vigor, just as I was just barely old enough to vote and vote against him. It's really strange to me that my upbringing, my race, my family's proper upper-middle-class lifestyle, my everything that to this day leaves me in not one protected group, has had no effect whatsoever on where I am and where Obama is. Other than being born American, everything he had was different, further, harder. But America has kept its promise. There will be no aristocracy. My dad was a brigadier general. His dad was a Kenyan goat herder. I never finished college. He kept working hard until he was a professor of constitutional law. I have done every bit as well as I had intended, as well as I had worked hard, as far as I was willing to go, and so has he. When I started kindergarten, he was still in grade school. On the bicentennial, we were both kids, just American kids. I was 6 and rode in a parade with red, white, and blue streamers in my spokes. He was 12, just a kid. Now, unlike anywhere else on Earth, we are each the full measure of our efforts towards our own dreams, and most importantly, unlike our now former president, without any aid or ultimate setback because of who our fathers were. I think the people of younger and older generations are now in a place I have always been, kind of wondering what's in his head, where his real priorities are. But at long last, for me, someone is in the big chair that shares a lot of the same history with me. I had a teacher in high school that tried to say that while my experience had value, hers had more simply because she had more of it. I said, "You really can't measure experience like that. You may have seen things that I have not, but you will never have any idea what it's like to be 15 years old in 1985. Now that I am older than she was then, it only rings more true. Barack understands that far more than she could. For our entire childhood, global thermonuclear war was a constant threat. Sure, there were bombs before then, but ever since we can remember, the whole world was only 45 minutes away from there being no evidence that life ever existed on this planet. As an adult, you can swallow that, particularly with the boiling frog nature of coming upon you. But as a kid, it shapes your whole mindset. Tomorrow is not likely. It resulted in us being labeled slackers for lack of motivation to build our future that we were sure would never come. When the wall came down, so did everything we had ever known. We had a real future to look out for, work for. We had to dust ourselves off, quit whining, and change everything. I don't know, somehow it's just very comforting knowing that my president knows very well what it was like to be a kid then. There is a great deal that he will not take for granted, and those before him have. He will not assume that it is impossible to return to those dark days. He won't turn his back on Putin. He won't let us slide down that slippery slope with anyone. He knows that at first it looks harmless, but it leads to something horrible. And one more thought. He's more of a Republican than Ronald Reagan, and he's more of a Democrat than Bill Clinton. I suggest that you go read his speech again if you haven't already. Read it twice. And I think if you look carefully, you will see proof of both. Those are my thoughts. Thanks for listening.